So I'm going to start with you, Anna, if I may. So Anna May Wong always seems to me, not only is she this big star and big sort of historical figure in many ways, but I also wanted to ask you a bit about her personality, because she seems to me this quite extraordinary, self-contained, purposeful kind of individual. She's very intelligent, which really comes across in all of her performances and everything that she writes and says. And she seems to be a person who, when she finds obstacles in life, she goes around them. She works out something to do and does it. And I wonder if that is something to do with her background. Do you know if, I mean, this is an unusual personality type, particularly, if I may say so without sounding horrible, for actresses of the silver screen. She really comes across as a very different type of personality to the usual film star.
That is true. For those of you who don't know, I was born about 2 years after she was born. She passed away, sadly. However, my father was the youngest of her siblings and spent many years telling me about her personality as an actress and as a person. She was very independent, which I think comes across in her roles, which I'm very proud of. She also has an amazing sense of humor, which I don't know if anybody can see that, but she was very funny. She loved to entertain people. And she loved having her Christmas parties and her dinner parties. And she was a very, very good, strong friend. So I'm glad you see that personality difference, because I think for her era of films, and you weren't supposed to be strong. And if you had an obstacle, you either went through it, you pushed it aside, or you just got rid of it. So I think that's an interesting observation. I'm glad you made that. I hope everybody else can see that.
So she has this period of, she rises fairly rapidly to notice and attention in Hollywood, but she is struggling to get parts that progress her career in a meaningful way or that are satisfying. So, but instead of, complaining and whining, she kind of does something about it and gets up and goes off on this incredible journey. A series of journeys, really. And throughout her life, she seems to have been incredibly determined. I was just wondering where that sort of independence came from.
My family. My family was very strong personality, very strong-willed. My father would have this phrase when we were children, don't sheep, which for a while we couldn't figure out what it was, but it basically meant, and I'm not, don't take this the wrong way, but don't be a white sheep, be a black sheep. In a crowd of white sheep, you should be a black sheep. So in my family, the phrase was, don't sheep. And that's her personality. When she was sort of disgruntled and very unhappy about her acting period in Hollywood, she just said, you know what? Peace out, I'm gone. And so she went to Europe and she had a successful stage career. She was in radio, TV, and she was still making movies, like, for example, the movie we just saw. So I think that's important, that her personality was very strong and sometimes got her in trouble, but I think her personality helped forge the actor that she was.
I mean, maybe if I could add to that a little bit.
Yes, in a second.
Oh, okay.
I'll just make one observation first. But so the other thing that's really noticeable is that she doesn't have, like several other actresses, a kind of Svengali type. She's not made by anybody, is she? So there's no von Sternberg or anyone in her background. She seems to have decided early on what she wanted to do, and she was very driven.
Yes, she was very driven. I think she was her own Svengali.
Yeah, which is really incredibly unusual.
Yes, exactly. And those ages you didn't have. You had somebody, and especially for someone of her race, she was expected to have a Svengali.
Yeah.
And she decided, I don't read one of those either. And she did it on her own.
Yeah. Very modern.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
For her times. Yes.
So, Katie, the film we've just seen marks her first starring role. It's the first time she takes the
First time
lead.
in 9 years.
Yeah.
Her first starring role is in The Toll of the Sea, but
Yeah.
she can't get another one in Hollywood, which is
Yeah.
why she leaves.
So, I mean, there are many peaks and troughs in her career, which you've documented so accurately in your book. Can you describe Song as a peak, a pinnacle in her career?
I mean, I think it is the beginning of a pinnacle. I think the entire time she spends in Europe, which is almost 3 years, is a huge success for her, right? She makes Song, becomes this huge sensation in Germany. I mean, Andreas and I were talking earlier, before the film even premieres, she's become a star, essentially. It's shown all over Germany. She then moves on to England, to London. She makes Piccadilly, which will also be screened as part of the season. And then she makes her live theater debut in the West End here. So for 3 years nearly, she's traveling back and forth between Germany, France, London. So it's an incredibly productive and fulfilling period of time for her, right? She feels validated in that she's finally able to be the starring role, to have all of the screen time, to be given many parts that allow her to show the range of her expression, of her faculties as an actress, which is not what Hollywood was willing to do, right? They always wanted her to play the dragon lady or the China doll, or the background, the bit player. And, although there are still stereotypical elements to these films, I mean, even in Song, we can't escape that, and she still dies in the end. But, when she is interviewed by Mind Film, she says, this is my part, this is my role. She was incredibly excited to play it because she knew what a challenge it would be as an actor, right? And she wasn't given those types of parts in Hollywood.
So can you tell us how it was she was in Hollywood and how it was she gets to Europe?
Yes.
Is there a story there where is there something that takes her to Germany in particular?
Well, there is a story there. I mean, as you mentioned, she was very intelligent. I mean, she didn't finish high school, but was well-read, very, interested in the arts. I mean, she loved other artists, writers. I mean, a lot of her romantic affairs were with writers and artists and cinematographers. And, she isn't like most Hollywood actresses, right? She's thinking, she's reading. And so she ends up circulating in these expat circles in Hollywood. So she's hanging out with the Brits and the Germans. She becomes good friends with Emil Jannings. And then she meets a man named Karl Vollmuller, who's kind of this go-between Germany and Hollywood. And he's so smitten with her that he ends up writing the novel that becomes a screenplay for Song. And so he essentially brokers this deal for her to come to Berlin, make a film with Ufa. And, he proposes this to her. I think she actually, as early as 1927, might have had plans to go because she did register at that time as a Chinese American. She had to be documented in a way that normal American citizens did not. So we know that in 1927, she applied to leave the country, but she ended up not leaving.
Wow.
So she didn't come to Germany until 1928, but had that idea in her mind. And you have to remind yourself, she was only 23 when she made this film. And I like to tell people, she didn't speak a word of German. The farthest away from home she'd ever been was Canada. And she asked a lot of people what they thought she should do. And they said, you shouldn't go because it's such a risk. You'll leave and you'll never have a career again in Hollywood. And of course, she made up her mind to go.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
How many 23-year-olds would do that? Well, I shall remain silent on subjects. Any 23-year-olds in your audience? Okay.
There you go.
I'll shut up then. But I hope you have that kind of fortitude of spirit. Take a lesson from Anna May. Yeah, I mean, that's an amazing story. And Vollmuller, of course, is the guy who goes on to write The Blue Angel, am I right?
I actually don't think he wrote The Blue Angel, but he wrote something else, The
Somebody.
Miracle.
Okay.
That was a big hit, I believe.
Right. Who writes The
But
Blue Angel?
he wrote the novel that Song is based on.
Yeah.
So that's very important. And he was friends with, I think you write about that in your book as well, with Richard Eichberg, the director. And Eichberg was known as a star maker in Germany by that time. So he had several people under his contract and that he discovered. So Vollmer, just the idea of what can we do to push Anna May to where she belongs, and you take that director who was very popular at that time in Germany, and Germany being in the 20s, a very big film nation, very successful film nation. Mm-hmm. I think that was a very smart move. And I mean, you all saw what Eichberg did with Anna May Wong, or rather what she did with, the possibility to star in a film at the end of the 20s, where the storytelling was much more sophisticated than, for example, Tall of the Sea today. It's a great film, but this is a different kind of beast. So
very much so. Yeah. Things have really moved on, haven't they, by that time? So it seems like this part, the film, was really, it's made for her, isn't it? I mean,
it was written for her, and in fact, the reason it's Song is because they retitled it from Dirty Money to Song as an homage to her Chinese name, Wang Liuzong. Yeah. And so even the last scene, right, is her profile. Mm-hmm. So it really feels very much, there's almost no distinction between her and the character in that sense.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it looks amazing. I think stunning, really, compared to the print that I've been seeing for the last 30 years. So tell us a bit about that, Andreas.
Well,
what were you working from? What were you working with?
I saw the film that Bryony just mentioned, the print that was, circulated in the last couple of decades at the Berlin Film Festival. I think it was in 2018 in a retrospective. I don't even know what kind of retrospective it was, but I saw the film and I haven't seen it before. I fell in love with the film. I fell in love with Anna May Wong. Obviously, I think probably everyone who watches that film does that. And I was wondering, like, is that it? Because in 2018, you already, were able to do other stuff with, better material. And I was asking Ron, and someone pointed out to me that there is this beautiful negative, like the original camera negative stored here at the BFI. Mm. Where the print that already circulated for such a long time was based on it. So that's when I thought, that something has to be done with this film, because it's a great film with an amazing actress, and she deserves better. That film deserves better. So we started talking with BFI back then. I started doing research, and then I found another print in Canberra in Australia, faraway place. And to my knowledge, to this day, these are the only two, surviving original materials from that time. So we got your cam neg and had a look at it, and it looks beautiful. It had, there's one scene in the market. My restorations, I always try to keep some of the defects in as a reminder of what it was. It had a couple of chemical decompositions, but nothing that you couldn't work with. But the very interesting thing is that the print, the camera negative, was shorter than the print from Australia, and it seems like it had been re-edited for further use a couple of months later. There were scenes missing that were in the Australian print. Probably the most interesting one is this underwater scene, which kind of looks kind of naive, but it informs a bit more about the character of Heinrich George, in that he still fights, and he's so mad with this whole love thing with my kid is and he pushes him down, even even if you see the hands afterwards, he pushes him down. So that was cut out of the camera negative. A couple of other scenes, a couple of beautiful close-ups of Anna May. So probably those were, edited from, some collector took it. But I don't even know about that, because I was talking to Bryony as well, because there were dozens on dozens of scenes. And I hope you didn't see it that much, because we were really working hard to cover that. of scenes that had frames missing in the end, in the beginning, like 20, 30, 40 frames, sometimes in the middle. But, someone probably tried to shorten the film for the future release. But all these moments were important because there was a lot of Anna May Wong that was just missing in the camera negative. Just, a glance, a smile, a tear, an opening of a door, a closing of a door, just something that gives you a much better flow for the film. And we were lucky to have the print from Australia, but that was a very bad print. That was a film that was probably, shown in other countries before until it ended up in Australia. But we had all these scenes. So I think the most difficult part for us was to get these two prints together and make them look as one. Sometimes you can see it here because the grain is so very, very different. But in the end, we were kind of happy to have this much rounder and much fuller experience. And once Stephen came along as well, who played for the film many years ago and had these fond memories of it. And once he found out that I was restoring it, he came up to me and asked me right away if he could play for that. So whenever the film is shown somewhere now, I'm telling them, please, get this guy to play for it because he loves the film as much as I do. And I think you can feel it from what he was doing with the film, and that helps the film so much. So thank you again, Stephen, for that. But again, it's just, the beautiful thing is the camera negative. Because we don't have it that often that a film from that time survived.
Right. Yeah.
And you told in the beginning, it's been in the BFI archive for a long time, and obviously you took very good care of it. So it was a pleasure to work with it. And now that the film is finished, I need to tell you that this film, and it's important for you as well, is running like hell. It's been like it was at the Cinematheque in Paris. It was in Bucharest. It's going to play in Washington in November at the American Film Institute. It's going to be at the San Francisco Silent Film Festival. It's going to be in Copenhagen next year. It's going to be in Istanbul next year. So I'm already thinking about doing a tour T-shirt, song here and Anna May Wong's logo and just all the locations, because it's not only the festivals. It's places like the BFI here, because there's this interest in Anna May Wong that obviously because of your book that was released now, and just pushing the discussion about her and thinking about her. So you have that and a general interest in the topic as what is it to be an American Chinese and in these in classic Hollywood and trying to make your foot there, and then what a life story, coming over to Europe and doing this and having your first starring role here and then being swept back to America with that success in your bag. So there's this interest, and I think every screening that I've been to, people just I think they will all come home and say, "Wow, what an actress!" And because. And then I will finish. Sorry for talking so long.
That's fine. That's why you're here.
It's you work for a couple of years with a film like that, so every frame. And what a pleasure it was to have all these close-ups of her. So because that I think that's this thing that struck me in 2018, and every time that I see it now, it's this luxury to have a film that gives an actress the chance to play. Because before that, yesterday I've seen Thief of Baghdad, and it's just these little moments with her. And you already saw the potential there. Yeah. But here you have so many close-ups, so you can linger on her face and whatever she's doing with her eyes, and just little gestures, big gestures, little gestures, the tears. And also her body, the film really embraces the chance to work with her. And it's very different because you just asked that, and you mentioned that, the Svengali idea. If you look at other films that Richard Eichberg did, this is a very different film in terms of lighting, setup, camera. So it felt like there was a flow between the actress and the camera and the director, which transcended the screenplay by far.
It's very, very specific, isn't it? And it's sort of interesting because having done some restoration work on Piccadilly, so it's lived with that print for a very long time. You get even though she is not, on the credits as the star, there's no one else in the film. I can't even remember who's in it.
Gilda
most.
Gilda Gray.
I can really. But I mean,
right.
She's exactly.
But
isn't it?
Anna May Wong completely steals
There
the
is
show from her.
Yes.
Something about Anna May Wong. What do you think it is, Katie?
Well, it's it, right? She has that magnetic quality. I mean, it's something you're born with, and I think in her case, she understood that she had that, right? And she really believed in it, which is why she was so headstrong and stubborn and not willing to take a no for an answer. But I want to just kind of echo what Andreas was saying about the film. I mean, the first time I watched it, because, in 2022, we didn't have the restored version yet. And the only way to see it was to come here to BFI. And so, I had done all this research on the film. I had read about it, read the synopses, but that can't really tell you what a film is until you watch it. And it was the first thing I screened, and it completely blew me away. And I left, the BFI archive that day thinking, well, some other people have to see this. It can't just be me and alone in a dark room. Like, this has been, hidden away, and it rarely has ever screened in the U.S.
It had actually, but a long time
long
previously.
time ago.
Yeah.
Right, and so
No,
very
I
few people have ever seen it.
It comes in sort of
Waves.
yeah. And as people rediscover her, there is this sort of, we're all slightly overwhelmed by her.
Yes,
She can't-
yeah.
She's sometimes a little unreal, almost. Too good to be true. She's this, and I wonder if it's also something about the 1920s and her Art Deco-ness, a physical sort of.
I mean, she was kind of the
She's
embodiment
so-
of the flapper.
so sort of perfect for the times.
Yeah. I mean, and in a way, it was her, especially within the American context, becoming a flapper was her way of saying that she was American, that she was culturally fluent, right? Because people would look at her and they would think that she was a foreigner. When she'd been born in Los Angeles, she'd never been to China. She spoke Cantonese with an American accent, right? And so she would always surprise reporters, not only with her perfectly stylish outfit and her cloche hat, but also with the slang that she spoke, right? Like any other young American woman. So in a way, she kind of embodied that image so well that she became a symbol of it.
Which is a strange mixture in a kind of way, the very modern and the very ancient, in that sort of set of aesthetics around the time. It's interesting.
I've wondered the same thing, because they would have been in Germany around the same time. I think that Louise Brooks, though, was very busy having a love affair with someone else at that point. So they may not have, and she was like showing up to the studio late and things like that. And I think they were on different, they were definitely on different sets. So I don't know if they ever socialized. I'm sure they knew of one another because they were both here as Americans from Hollywood. I think interesting for me is to have seen the parallel, to have Louise Brooks films made in Germany rediscovered relatively recently, and then hailed as masterpieces. I've always hoped for the same thing for Anna May Wong, and I think that we're getting there, right? I mean, the film is restored, and you've all seen it tonight, so it's interesting. But I think the one other thing I should mention too is that, in Louise Brooks's case, her gamble on going to Germany really didn't pay off. It didn't help her at all. In Anna May Wong's case, it was the exact opposite. She was, the toast of Europe for 3 years. By the time she finally gets to Hollywood, they're kind of like, well, I guess we might have made a mistake. And so they're finally willing, to give her a starring vehicle at Paramount. Unfortunately, it's a Fu Manchu film. So while the production value is extremely high, it's called Daughter of the Dragons, also being screened here at BFI. And she's got all these beautiful costumes designed by Travis Banton. It's a Fu Manchu story. It's very lurid. She's out to avenge, the death of her father. She lusts for blood. So you can just see the limitations that Hollywood had when they thought of Anna May Wong.
it was this film where you see her in the beginning of the film just in rags, and at the end when she has this, you know, the sword dance, and she is a goddess, right? I mean, you look at her, the way it's filmed, the costume, we're talking about this Art Deco aspect of it, and you have like the male audience, the gaze of the male audience. It's very nice in the film, because everyone is just, it's just this jaw-dropping thing. So you would think it's an easy sale for Hollywood, because that's, you know, that was like that classic Hollywood star attitude that you would later see in Shanghai Express. But then again, you know, Sternberg's being a director with very specific European tendencies, he was the one who would be able to make her look exactly like that again, because she's stealing Marlene Dietrich so in that film. Whenever they're together, it's just, you know, you look at her and not at Marlene. So I think it's kind of interesting how Hollywood really didn't get it, you know, and didn't find a way to give her the space that she would have needed.
I mean, I think it really is a racial issue, right? Because
I'm
they
sure
don't
of it.
want to promote her as a leading lady, because a leading lady should be a white woman, someone you want to marry.
Yeah.
You can't marry a Chinese American woman. It's illegal to marry someone of another race.
And then I'm sorry for keeping you from your question. The Good Earth, the Pearl's Buck adaptation, where she was supposed to get the lead at some point or another, and then another, you know, countryman of mine, even from my city, Louise Reiner from Düsseldorf, she got that role, which is totally strange. She didn't even speak proper English at that time. And then she's supposed to play a Chinese girl, where in this film you already have the character in the beginning from Good Earth. You know, it's like, here, this is what I can do, take me.
And this
Hollywood
is
missed out
because
on that.
She
And that's
couldn't be
the
paired.
racial-
Is that right? She couldn't be paired with a
I mean,
male.
honestly, I mean, they had a production code that said there was no miscegenation, no interracial couples. I think they really just used it as a pretense, because it doesn't actually make sense, because basically they had already cast Paul Muni as the male lead, and then they said, well, Anna May, you can't play the female lead, because then you'd be a Chinese woman opposite a European man, even though they're both playing Chinese people. You know, the logic, there's no logic
It's
there.
extraordinary,
No.
isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, well, the thing with sound is interesting, and perhaps that's something, you know, after this sort of flourishing of her, you know, she's called, I can't remember who wrote it, a silent miracle, you know, and there is something about her in silent film, I think, that's really extraordinary. And then there's this transition to sound film that actually she makes successfully, but there is a moment there where people are slightly uncomfortable. Perhaps it's something to do with accent, Anna. I don't know if you have a view on that.
Possibly. It's interesting because people do, like Katie said, they expected her to have an accent when she was born in Los Angeles, California. And she grew up in Los Angeles, California, which makes her a United States citizen. And she didn't have any accent, but people expected her to have an accent, which I think is almost offensive, because until someone opens their mouth, they have no idea. You have no idea how they sound. And she sounded like American slang. She sounded like an American because she's American.
Which I think has a different connotation, obviously, in America, where, you know, presumably in LA, everyone was fine.
I keep
with
forgetting
her
we're not
accent.
we're not in the U.S. Sorry, I'm from the U.S.
Well, in fact,
And then,
when
you know, maybe in London, you know,
Well,
this
right.
was taken slightly differently.
yes, in fact, when she makes her debut on the stage on the West End, all of the reviewers, well, of course, they first say, well, she's so beautiful, her skin's like porcelain, blah, blah, blah.
Shame about the twang.
yes, shame about the twang. Her terrible American accent, that Broadway,
I'm so sorry.
you know, and all
I
of,
have one.
all of the critics, they just can't help themselves. They have, I mean, every single one of them has something to say about her accent. And so she then goes and pays a tutor like 200 guineas to have a British elocution. So we actually don't know what her original accent sounded like, because her first talkie film, The Flame of Love, which is also being screened here, is after that point, right?
Yeah.
She's already taken the lessons, so she just keeps that accent throughout the rest of her
And
life.
it's very good. She has a astonishing facility with language. I think that's
yes.
true. She picks stuff up incredibly quickly.
Yes.
And she sounds beautifully neutral in Flame of Love, I think. It's convincing. So she does a very good job. Multi-talented, so very multi-talented.
Heinrich George, Henry George, he was a powerhouse in German silent cinema at that time. You might have seen him as the workers' leader in Metropolis, which of course was shot before that. So he had a very, like Emil Jannings, like a very physical presence. He was not a good-looking guy, but he was this brutish character. But with him, you could, as a director, do completely different things than just, pair Anna May Wong with a beautiful actor like yesterday in Großstadtschmetterling, Pavement Butterfly yesterday, for those of you who've seen that. This, of course, gives a completely different dynamic. And also, I think it's a smart idea to have an actor who is already, very versatile in German filmmaking and very well known. So he would also be attracting audiences at that time, and then put her next to this tiny little Anna May Wong, and then you have him. So the visuals alone are so much more interesting than Pavement Butterfly the year later, and it adds immensely to the power of the film, I think.
I think he would have been Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
If he'd been, that's the type.
The sad thing about this actor, though, is he became one of the most popular actors. But he was very popular, but once the Nazis took on power, he became one of the actors of that time. So he was really one of the most popular actors from 33 to 45. Yeah.
Okay, well, I really hate to stop the conversation because this is all fascinating, but I have to. You can see Katie and Anna. I think you're on tomorrow to talk more about the long and exciting career of Anna May Wong. So I'd like to thank them very much. Thank you so much for being here. And I would like to thank Andreas, dear friend and FIAF colleague, in the pursuit of such a beautiful, beautiful restoration. So thank you very much, and thank you all very much for coming.